just go live here. Oh. So yep, we got that going. Hey, South Africa, Colleen, good. Raoul, okay, so we got some, and Ram, thanks for joining. Or Ram, I guess you want. Lorenzo, thanks for joining. Lariania. Sorry, I hope you don't feel too bad that mispronounce your name. We got someone from down on the Hell. Thanks for joining. Glad it's possible for you to join our session today. Yes. So we are in the studio. We got all of the things going, and hopefully things will run out smoothly. Yes. Hey, Prasant, Abu Dhabi. Oh, so I guess you have been to the World Fair, whatever it's called. Hi, Amut. Amrut? Sorry. I don't know. Should I try to say your names or not? That's, yeah, the big question. Cool. And yeah, we still have 1 minute before we start. And yeah, this is... Hello, Vingesh. I tripled. Oh, there's actually a question here. Hi, Balu. I guess that is a question. Comment. Yeah, so we'll need to find out how to use this tool. Hi, yes, what? Hi, Zach. So cool. Thanks for joining. I am really excited that you joined here. Hi, Jan. Yeah, welcome. Good to see some other Danes here. And from Australia also. Winkrat, thanks for joining. I was supposed to join an Australian conference last week, and that was early for me. But let's see. I hope. Thanks for joining. Yes, let's get started. You are here on time, and that is what is most important. We're trying out a new setup, so obviously there can be things that does not work as expected, etc. So bear over with us. I hope you hear me. If you do not hear the sound, there's a unmute you or unmute the sound part. Good, but let's get started. You're here. So we want to talk about how you can automate your the way you're delivering SAP integration at this point in time in 2022, because things have changed a lot over the last years. You're not really supposed to be doing manual work anymore for these things. Well, let's get started. So we have a long agenda, and I need to move myself, I think, over here. Like that, so you can see it. So I think that there's a need for some better processes. It is challenging to get working, or what is actually challenging to get working with these things. Our take on DevOps. How do you handle testing of integrations? How would you implement the tool, the Figaf tool, budget, and business cases? And then hopefully we got time for some Q&A at the end. So let's get started. So your specialist times is really important, and I think this is a key concepts. And we do have the first survey going out, and right now I see a lot of requests for developer resources, consultants, and I can see that it is really difficult to find developers and that knows integration tools, etc. And if you want the architects that really understand the full complex, the ideas, and build lasting integrations, it becomes even more difficult to really find the most pressing places. So what are they actually spending their time on? And we got this time. So how much time do you actually spend a week on doing testing, governance, transports, etc.? Is a short little thing we can ask, because I think it is some important task, and we'll get more into these later. And let's see if I can actually see the results here. We need to close it, I guess. I can see the results here. Okay. Yeah. And obviously, when we start talking about these things, I need to move again. Put it up there. There. So transports can be really fast. And here's an example of a change request I got, and 40 minutes later, it was in production. And we had some time to do some testing, but as we said, this is not really the way you should be delivering integrations right now, because, well, I did not have any review, any documentation, any testing, except what the business did. And if we look at the poll, I don't know if you would actually be able to see it, but I can publish. I don't know if you can see it, but 31% said more than 6 hours a week. 30% said between 4 and 6 hours. So most people would be spending more than 6 hours or 4 hours on the documentation testing. So it is something that you spend a lot of time on, and the idea is, how do we actually simplify this? And as you can see here, we can do it fast, but I would not recommend this to anyone, because it is not really a sustainable solution. And especially for the next guy that comes in to work on this, he would need to understand what kind of a change I made here, where I made the change, what is going on, and he would have no clue about it, or she. So we do have a need for some better processes. Integration Suite is not really a toy anymore. At the time we were doing this, we were using it for a lot of pre-delivered content. It was just something that you would be using as a part of the delivery process. Import export, as we use there, is not really best practice, and you need if CPI cloud integration is something you want to be doing, you need to have the proper processes in place. Governance is obviously important on it. Testing, it should, as a developer, I find it really difficult if I cannot test my integrations, and I need to ask the business every time to run some test and understand what is going on and why things are the way it is. And that I mean that the developers should be able to run these tests. Hi, Bernard. So some of the challenges with DevOps, and I will move myself down here again, is, if we talk about it in the normal sense, then you have two places where you're maintaining the development artifacts. You would have your Git repository and your IDE, where you can do a lot of development in, And then you'd have the web IDE where you'd be working on the BPMN model, the mappings, all these things that are specifically for a CPI environment. And that means you have two places where you have code, and would you then have it in Git branches and web IDE, or how do you actually would synchronize between these things? As I see it, you would not have that, or it's not that often that you would have multiple developers working on one iFlow. And I think anyway, if you did that in even with branches, it would be pretty difficult to actually know what is going on. And I guess the last person that checks in his code, I guess you would get some errors if you have made changes to the same code, but deploying it and testing it will be challenging. I think it can be a bit challenging for new developers to learn how to set it up and understanding what is changed, and especially if we talk into SAP objects like the BPMN model. I'm not sure what is going on with the. I guess you other guys is hearing it okay, right? So yeah, SAP have released, or there's a few options here. There is a blog on using some of the Jenkins pipelines, and we tried to get it working, and it worked. But as I see it, it has some challenges that you would need to. Good. Yeah, you would need to set up multiple pipelines for each iFlow you have, and thus makes it difficult to actually see what is going on. FlashPipe is an option, and we also tried to create a view on our tool to handle it. So using our Gradle plugins, we could run it in an Azure DevOps environment, create a proof of concept for it, but it still lacks these few points about where do you actually go, who owns the code, etc., and how do you transport it. So what is our take on this? And I guess we can take the second poll, Michael. So how do you actually handle your transports at the right now? And we'll talk about our process on it. So we wanted to make it easy to handle the transport process, because you should be able to see what is going on, who have made which options, and yeah, it should not be difficult to set up. It should enable you to handle all the SOX ITIL requirements about knowing which objects has changed, who made the changes, etc. And that is one of the biggest challenges with how do you actually handle it? How do you set up configurations in the landscape? This should be easy to configure the iFlow. It should not be something that looks afterwards. And then, yeah, testing should be a part of the framework that you're using for this. So yeah, as I can see, quite a number of people are using file import, export. I think that's the biggest thing. Then we got CTS and Charm and SAP Transport Manager. Also a large percent, I think that's half, that is using those two. And then not as much on the last other options. And even though you're using CTS Plus, Charm, Transport Managers, they would still suffer for some of these things. You can obviously do the transports, but it is really difficult to do proper review, understand what's being changed. And hopefully by the end of today, I will show you some ideas on how this can be done differently. So what is the Figaf platform and how does it work? So it is a standalone Java application that you can either deploy in your BTP in the Cloud Foundry environment. We created a guide on how to set this up. And the idea is that you run this as a separate application, Cloud Foundry application that then connects to all your CPI tenants. And it can also connect to your PI system, which is really useful if you're doing migrations. And it still would also have the same capabilities to handle transports, testing, governance of PI as you'd see today. But we'll not cover that too much today. Because that's not the scope. You can also run it on a laptop or on your own hardware. It is not really a huge requirement that it has like 8 GB of RAM is what it needs to have. Good. So if we talk about our Git process, is I would say a little of a challenge or a simple way to handle it. So the way it works is that you would be developing in your CPI system. In the Figaf tool, you would then call this CPI system, download all the artifacts. It will then push this to a repository, and then the user from his IDE can go in, pull all of these changes, and by having all of your iFlow in a repository, it makes it really easy to search for specific code, content, etc., making it a lot easier for you to manage the workflow. So yeah, that simplifies the process. We also deliver a number of Gradle plugins, which speeds up the process because you do not need to go through and understand how to set all of these different things up. Then once you want to edit a Groovy script, etc., you can then push this using these Gradle plugins, upload and download changes as you would be doing development. And once you are done with it, you would then, I would normally say you should not commit it back into the Git repository, but just let it move this direction around. The only thing I would normally recommend committing would be test cases that you would create, and we also have some ways to handle and create test cases. But let me show you what this looks like. So here I have the Figaf tool, and what I will then do is I will go in, I will synchronize one package where I've made a change in. And now you can obviously schedule this to run every hour, but if you're doing development, it is also possible to just synchronize the artifact that you want to cover. And let's see here, it takes 18 seconds. And what we can then see is we have an iFlow here. We can go to our Git repository, we can pull it. And then we should see that this iFlow has also been changed here. There's 6 files in the commit. That we have here, so we can see the differences that have been changed here. The date here has been changed, that's good. What we can also do is, and I guess this is, if once you get to create test cases, you can also run the testing here. And if you run it in debug mode, you will be able to see a debug view if I set the breakpoint the correct place. And here we can see once we're processing the code, what's going on. And this really speeds up the time it takes to do any development because you do not need to set up specific processes to handle this. Once I am satisfied with all the development I've done, I have option here to upload an artifact. So all of these templates would then be published or created automatically. And here you simply just have some simple configurations that you set up and handle in that way. And that really speeds up the process. And so down here, we get a lot of these templates that you just need to copy paste in and set in. Good. We can go much more into details about these things, but there's a lot of other things I also want to cover. And I do have some different options for you to go more into details about some of these things. Next up is we would look at the transport, and hopefully by the end of this, I would be able to convince you that the governance part and processing would be a lot easier to manage than the SAP Transport Manager, CTS Plus, or file import exports. But the idea is that the tool will enable you to handle the transports. It will enable you to test the iFlows that you have created. It will give you full visibility about the change and what is going on in it. You would have some APIs that you can handle all of these transport also from external tools. So hook it up to ServiceNow, Solman, Jira as a way to handle it. You can configure iFlows, and it will create all the documentation that you need for having good processes in place. But I like to show it. I think that gives you a better idea what it is. Okay, so we made this change here. We created a change on our iFlow here, and we had a ticket about this. A specific reason for it, and obviously you would find a compelling reason about the customer change or whatever it is, and we will then link it to a Jira issue that we have. So this would be a way for you to handle the linking of Jira issues. It will not replace Jira, but it will just be something that correlates to all the different artifacts that we have as a part of this. We need to select a landscape. You can have multiple landscape as a part of this. In general, you probably have one or two for each systems and how they would interact with each other. So now I have all the artifacts here. I can say attach all dependent objects, and then this would link all the artifacts that's part of this, all the required artifacts, packages, etc., to this. So next up is we want to test it, and we can look up the different test cases that we have already created, and this makes it a lot easier for us to test because we can then just see, okay, what are the test cases we have, connect to them, and we can then run them on this given system. And we'll go more into details about creating test cases and running them a little later. But obviously, testing is an important part of this. You need to have the testing process in place for this to work out smoothly. And in a bit of time, we should be able to see here the result of our tests. Obviously, the way we test is we are using the trace capabilities of the iFlow, which means we can then switch an iFlow into trace mode, send messages to it, and then we can download all the subsequent messages. And here we can see what are the differences, and we can see that one of the key concepts we changed was this webinar, that is now the webinar text. So we know this text and these artifacts is what we would expect them to be. We can go in and ignore certain elements, or we can just say, okay, now next time we run it, this is our expected test case. So we have continuously be able to ensure that our test case is valid and they would always work. So we've tested it now. We're satisfied with the result. We can then go in and create the transport. So as a developer, I can go in here and I can understand what values should be changed once I'm deploying to QA and production. And you can have multiple different landscapes in here. So we can simply just go in here and say 25 is the value, the QA services, demo, passwords, etc. All of these can be configured in a simple to use manner. And yeah, so we're also reusing the dev system for both QA, where we have option to add prefix, postfix for it. So now I have, as a developer, I am done with my work. I can send it to approval. And now I'm an approver. And obviously, generally, you should not be able to review and approve your own code. It should be something else. That's the default option, but to simplify demos, I also have an option to do it. As a developer or as an architect, I then have an option here to go in and review what was changed, and I can easily see where in the BPM model things were changed. I can expand and see this value that was changed. I think we can see the name of it. A good value 2 was changed from demo 11 to webinar. Thus, we have a lot of information about going on, and this is really a useful thing if you're looking at BPMN models. We also have a diff to HTML that will show you all the code differences that have changed, and this is good if you're reviewing XSLTs. All these other artifacts that is not standard processes, because if you look at changes in the BPMN model, it really becomes difficult to see what is going on. And we can also see the Groovy code. Someone has changed the bank code. Probably not ideal to review. I definitely would need to check extra on this. These comparison, you have them on all artifacts. You also have in the change model, so you can always go back and see which artifact was changed as a part of it, do the comparison, view the differences, etc. And we also have a message mapping comparison report, so you can show which part of a message mapping were changed for this perspective. So there's a lot of different views to simplify the way you're seeing what is being done. But yeah, despite the changes, I think this is what the business asked for, and I can then approve it. Now people can import it, or this could happen via the API, where you would be able to trigger the import configuration and applying of the transport. And yeah, it's doing synchronization here, also being able to log and handle all the artifacts that's part of this. So now we have imported it. We can set the ticket to result. And the only thing we then need to do is to go into the report, create it. And here we have generated a report that shows you what is going on. Oh, I got it on a different screen. So here we have the artifacts. We have attached objects, all the different objects in the different systems that has been imported. We have the test cases, the result of this test case we ran, and here we can only see the test case that was run with unsuccessfully. If we ran it again, we would be able to see it. And then we got the list of the imports, who approved it, etc. This ID file you can then upload to Jira or ServiceNow to handle what is going on. Yes, and obviously if you have questions, you can put them into the Q&A. Yes, Rajesh, changes can be compared. In this, as you hopefully saw right now, you can see, and if we just look at the system, we can see we have imported this QA iFlow here. We have versions of it. So we can see all the tickets that were involved in changing this iFlow at a certain point in time. And if it was a script, we can see here a script here. We also have the different versions of the script, and we can compare what is going on with this. And having a testing tool that shows differences makes this a lot easier. So we got those answered. Good. Cool. Yes. Okay. Now, any questions on the transport, then I'll try to answer them. There's some new question here. Multiple active versions of the same iFlow and maintain it. So you mean that if you have an iFlow and you want to have like configured it for multiple business company codes. Yes, we do have an option to handle that. If not, then try to write more about what you want. But the idea is here we would select an iFlow. Here we have an option under that is called, we have scenario documentations. We have a distributed configuration here. And this is a way where we can say, okay, we have a DE version, we have a DK version with some different artifact, with some different configurations, so in the same way. And then if we make a change on it, we can easily update a specific version with these settings that we have. Good. Okay. Yes, any more questions on testing? Otherwise, we will also have time at the end for some Q&A on it. And here we have our BPMN model. I think this is really a useful thing when you're comparing things to understand what is being changed and not just rely on a version different description. One of the things that we have coming up in this next release is binary landscapes. And our idea was, this was based on a PI requirements, where we want much more granular access to handle the transport from dev to QA. We even have options to go from QA to QA and redeploy different things in a CPI or PI world. But the idea is we wanted to have multiple iFlows, so we would make changes deployed into our QA system to transports, and then from QA we will then have one iFlow, that one transport from QA to production that correlates all of the last changes, move it into production. And the same thing, we can also just apply configuration and create a configuration transport to configure the production system. And this means that you as a user should never have have access to the CPI system to be able to configure these things, because it can all be handled via the tool. Okay. Testing. I believe testing should be a part of the delivery process. Having test cases that you can run and have confidence in is really important. It is easy, should be easy for developers to execute them, and it should be updatable if things change. And if you have artifacts that, for instance, calling Salesforce or SuccessFactors and create employee, you cannot do that multiple times. So you are doing a query about what was changed the last 5 minutes. Those things would never stay the same. So you would always have a way to handle these things. I just got one question here. Let's just take that. If we can do a rollback. So here in our transport, if we go back to our transport, we can see here our transport here. We normally have a rollback option that you would be able to deal with here, where you can click rollback and then it will roll back. Cannot recall what this is the wrong transport. If it is not the most current one, you don't have the option. Oh well, if we have an option to roll back, you would be able to see it here, the rollback option. So would this be a solution to standalone transport management for PI? If yes, so you can use the same process for handling PI, and it would also be able to configure configuration channels the same way as you saw here. It's a little more advanced because in PI the configuration channels is more complex and have much greater solution to handle those things. But the idea is the same thing. You would create a transport with some object, with some dependent objects, and then you can create the transport, and then that would apply configuration of channels, etc., and everything would be handled via the tool, passwords, etc. Okay. What do you mean with queues? Okay, let me just take the testing part. So that was the wrong one. So yeah, we wanted to create a way to simplify the testing process. So recording of test cases would be handled by the tool. You'd be able to send the same messages in, and updates, as you saw, we just did. And then it can be integrated with other platforms if you want to use some third party or system as a part of your transport process. You can still call these test suites that we create and run test on it. But let me show you how easy it is to create a test suite. So the way we do that is we go to our testing tool. We would see the iFlow we created. So here we have the iFlow. We select record messages. We add it to a test suite with some data on. We can specify how many messages we want, if we want to have a partner expression or content to give it a specific name. We can either do that on here or here. And this partner could be, if you are dealing with EDI partners, then it would be useful to know which partner you're dealing with, so you can manage your test cases and ensuring you got proper testing that is going on. And you're testing all your partners, or as many partners as possible. So now we have a list here. We can select it, and then this will enable us to record messages. So now the system have logged onto the system and change the iFlow into trace mode, and then the only thing we need to wait for is to someone that process these messages and to send in a message on this iFlow. And once you've done that, we can pull it, and it can also do that automatically after a period of time, and it can keep the iFlow into trace mode. It has a lot of capabilities on here, and we can see it is in progress. It will take a little while for it. So now we can see it's done. It got 1 inbound message and 33 outbound messages. And we can go in here, we can view the details here. We can see all the input message, the persisted messages that we have from this. So we got also both persisted and MPL attachment as a part of our test case. And what we can then do is we can click here, say create test case. It knows which other systems you can run it on. And what it will then do is you now have a test case, and you can then select run as we did before. And this will send the message in on the specific iFlow with these parameters that we have. Talking about parameters, there's a lot of configurations that you can set up if you need to download MPL attachments, if you want to include or exclude steps. So you can say, I'm only interested in the first and last step of this, or whatever really makes sense for you. When we're running, we have some different options also about included steps, which payloads we have. One really useful thing is we have mocked endpoints, and this will, if you have switched this on, the Figaf tool will create a copy of the iFlow and deploy it with mock endpoint as and this endpoint would then point to the Figaf tool, and that way you would be able to be able to test even these employee create multiple times and be sure that the data from there is correct. And the tool, if you make a modification in the iFlow, it will then deploy this as a part of How do I? So the tool will upload all of this with the same user that you connected to. So you only have one in the agent. You would configure which user you wanted to use, and then that would be the user that is used to handle the changes in the Figaf tool. We will be adding another feature to give you more details about which version have been uploaded as a part of the given change, giving you more details about which tool have made these changes. Good. So one of the things we are working on right now is to also support script and mappings, the different APIs, new APIs, that's API REST and OData, to handle those. And obviously, we also would be adding Gradle support, so you'd have these option to deploy and download these ones as a part of the delivery process. One of the things we're also working on right now is BTP deployment to make it simpler for you to deploy it there, because I think that is really simple to set up and get running. And it is really powerful if you want to share it with your team, show what you have set up. And then we're obviously looking to improve the PI to CPI migration process that we have developed with the tool. So the business case, as a lot of you guys wrote, you are spending more than 3 hours a day on, or 3 hours a week on transports. 6 hours a week on transports governance, and this is some of the things that you would be saving here. So the thing is, as you saw, we could do a transport in 10 minutes or whatever it took to do the transport after we have made the fix of it. But if we need to do it properly, have the right processes in place, it will take us maybe 4 to 8 hours to do all the documentation. That a lot of this time would be possible to save using the tool, because it can handle all these different things, and also the go live part, that it handles the configuration, etc. And if you have like 4 transport a month, spend 6 hours on it, and have a internal rate of 70 euros, it is 1,680 euros a month. There's a lot of other benefits that can be a little more challenging to understand. This is about that it would enable you to resolve these things faster, so the same number of developers can work on more integrations, because they are not bogged down by doing documentation. It simplifies the process. You would have a lot fewer errors, and if you have errors. So there's also a monitoring tool I did not get to show you today. There is training times is a lot easier, because it is really easy to learn and get to use the tool. And then you would get happy developers, because I don't think that there's a lot of developers that are enjoying doing documentations or handling these things. And the more you can automate of these things, the better. The price of the tool starts at 600 euros a month, and if you want the hosting in BTP, it is 300 euros also a month. But you can also run it if you have a spare server somewhere sitting. It is not a high requirements application for starters. If you start to have a lot of test cases running, etc., obviously that would increase the scale of it. Implementation plan. It is, you need to understand how to use the tool. You can book a meeting with me, and we can talk about how this tool could simplify into your processes. Do you also want it to incorporate your PIPO processes? What would be the way to handle this? We do have a free trial of the tool. That is really easy to set up. There's an installation that you can use on Cloud Foundry, and that's just a few questions or you need to go through to handle that. Then once you've done that, you need to connect it to the PI or PI or PO systems, also the API management systems. As different agents, you need to create the landscapes, and once you've done that, it is just to roll out the tool. Obviously, the time really depends on your organizations and your purchasing approval process, but we have had clients that are productive in less than 1 month after starting with the tool. So it really depends on you how long time it will take. But I guess, setting up this is really simple. And I think I've created a video where it takes like installation is like 10 minutes. And then configuration is, I don't know, 20 minutes to set it up. One thing that I have is I do have a bootcamp that we started up. I don't think this link worked, but I think Michael would put in a link where you can sign up. So our idea was that we wanted to make it as simple as possible for you to get started with the tool, understanding how to set up all of these different things. Michael, did you set in the offer, the link? I'll send it. So if you click this link, you would see this and be able to sign up for it. And the idea is it should be really simple to set up. So we will guide you through, or I will guide you through the session and set up how you can handle all of this this configuration. It is like a 3-day from February 8th to the 10th, and it will be 90 minutes a day. And in this process, we would learn how to set it up, how to configure, how to set up transport landscapes, handling all of these different things that is important to you as a part of the process. Then we would look at testing. How do you handle or set up the testing, run some tests? We would look at what kind of monitoring options that we have and how that can help you get through this process. And then we have also the development improvements. How do you handle the Git repository? What can be done there? How would you actually develop these artifacts that is going on? So I hope you want to join that one. And I guess we will also be sending out more information about that. But this is really a condensed way of training you on how to use the tool, set it up, and get started. We can also schedule a call. If you go to figaf.com/book, then you can set up a call with me, and we can talk with you and your team about how the tool will work, cover your specific questions that we do not have time to answer today, understand how the tool can be implemented in your processes and what is going on there. So go to figaf.com/book and schedule a time with me. If you want something else than Zoom, you just send me a meeting invite for the same period. And you also have the free trial of the tool. You can go at figaf.com/DevOps, and there you should see the different options for setting up the different processes that are going on. So I think that was what I wanted to cover today. I hope you signed up on the for the bootcamp, and I'll see you there. Let's see which answers I need to go through. We did rollback answer. We do not have event mesh. I don't know quite if there are any artifacts in event mesh, but that would obviously make sense. We do support API management. If the event mesh is similar or has some deployable artifacts that you can deploy and configure, then that would also simplify the process. If you want to run testing with, for instance, the REST mail, something or a file adapter that we do not support. So as default, we support HTTP OData process directs. And if it's something other than those, what we would do is we will create a copy of the iFlow, and then we would, instead of, for instance, a schedule block, we will insert a HTTP call that would enable us to trigger and run these messages. Yep. More questions? Chats. Good. Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Hope this has been helpful. Yeah, we have time for Q&A. Alexander, let's see where it disappeared. I'm published. Yes, so obviously you can run so we do have the pipelines that you can run, or yeah, you can trigger the test cases from the pipeline and say, okay, we want to run specific iFlows. We have some Gradle plugins that makes it easy for you to add it to your deployment process. One of the things we're also suggesting is that you would integrate the tool with your DevOps processes, but obviously it depends a lot on how you have set up those deployment processes. And I guess you would still have all these challenges about where specific artifacts will be deployed and configured. And obviously, I think the configuration makes this simple. Does this work in other DevOps frameworks? I think that so obviously that becomes a little of a challenge, this thing, because how do you handle it and etc. I think that in general, most of our clients would be using the for instance, in Azure DevOps, you would have the tickets. Those tickets would then correlate to the Figaf tickets. And with that, you would be able to handle it and set up, say, okay, if you import this ticket to QA, call the Figaf tool and import it into QA. Because anyway, a lot of the configurations that are going on can be a little challenging to handle this way. I think the best way would be this the Bootcamp to understand how to use the tool. There is also a number of resources if you sign up for the trial that you can get to understand how to deploy the tool, etc. Thanks, Sam. Shemail. You would these Gradle plugins we have delivered and the CPI testing can also be done through Eclipse. We just prefer IntelliJ because that have some advantages in general, making some of the things a little more easy and you do not need to understand too much about how they work, etc. And yeah, I also have cpicourse.com to help people get started using CPI. But yeah, the Eclipse or IntelliJ definitely helps make it easier to deal with these things. Chat. Good. Any questions that I did not get to answer? The chat is open. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope to see you on the 8th of February. And if you have questions along the way, just feel free to ping me or book a meeting. I can see we already got a few bookings, so that's good. Thanks for doing that. I really look forward to see you there. Yeah. Are there more questions? So Ramesh, I do have cpicourse.com as a place where you can learn about CPI, if that was the question. Thanks, Damien. Glad you could join. Good you liked it. Lorenzo, thanks. Good you joined it. Thanks for joining. Let's see if we got more questions here. Yeah, cpicourse.com. Check that out. Michael, could you also put the link into to sign up for the bootcamp? Thanks, Xiamei. Glad you liked it. Ramesh, thanks for joining. Alexander, if you want more questions on this DevOps, let's ping me and let's have a chat on it. Thanks, Kaplan. Great, you liked it. And I see we still have some Q&A going on. Selv tak. Capilla. Abish, thanks for joining. Glad you liked it. Yeah, so the link for the series is here. Go check that out and sign up for it. I hope to see you there, because I think this would also be quite an interesting event where we'll actually see how to deploy these things. And hopefully by then we also have our binary landscape of the CPI world, which also give you a lot better handling of transport capabilities. But yeah, I hope you book a session. Hope to get to talk with you on these things. Thanks for joining. You can send it as a sticky message. Oh, there's a QA here. Mohan, thanks for joining. Glad you liked it. Ravi, thanks for joining. Glad you liked it. And we go to chats. Thanks, Jan. You are welcome. Good. Cool. And we'll stop it here.